So my name's Jamie Cooper. I'm with Cincy Magazine and Cincy Connects. And so Cincy Connects is a B2B leads referral networking organizations. We have Michigan virtual B2B speed networking events every Wednesday night at 6 o'clock Eastern. So tonight we have our event where we come together every week to build relationships and refer business within the network and the organization. And then Cincy Magazine, by the way, to go to cincymag.com. We just released our October issue of the magazine. Super pumped. A lot of really great articles that you can read about. And I'll talk a little bit more about that after the roundtable. And Bruce, I have to say, you looked a lot different than this time than compared to last year. I would not recognize you.
A lot of people think I should have looked like this for 6 years. But I said, listen, you know what Cannabis needed was a three-piece suit with a white shirt, winning arguments with money. Like, right? If I didn't win arguments with money, and it took every little manipulation of image, thought. If I didn't win those arguments, the sector doesn't have Constellation dropping $4 billion in. And that means that there is no consumer packaged good planet on the planet right now that does not have an analytics group wondering when, how, and where they step into the cannabis business.
Yeah.
And so,
Tammy actually has some good things to say about Grand Haven and what you've been doing in that area. When she was on the first segment, talked about West Michigan being pretty conservative, all things considered. But Grand Haven was one of those bright spots. I just want to make sure that she knew that, Tammy.
Yes, and thank you, Tammy. Tammy has always been very supportive. I love everything that she's doing for our communities in West Michigan and the community that she's building and the support that she's giving people to run for these elected positions. You know, we do have 2021 is going to be a pretty big year. Those are our city elections. You know, right now we're looking at township, village elections. We have city elections. So, you know, city of Wyoming, city of Kentwood, those are nice little targets for us next year. And so, yeah, Grand Haven, you know, for several years, I was told it would never, ever happen here. And that just gave me more fuel for the fire. Don't tell me no. So.
Yeah, that's what they told us about the adult use program. You'll never get that passed. They'll never vote for it. Blah, 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 blah. It took us 3 times. Repealed today in 2012. I legalized in 2016. And then the MRTMA effort in 2018. But we persisted and we were successful. You can't listen to the haters, the people that try to make you doubt yourself.
That's right. You know, I was thinking about 2 days ago was, I wonder what Scott Greenlee is doing these days. Do you remember 2 years ago, like the No campaign that was coming out against us, and this guy was just hating on cannabis so bad, you know?
I had to debate that guy. I had to debate that guy on Wood TV along with the Kent County prosecutor. I debated him at Grand Valley, debated him at Wealthy Theater.
And she crushed it.
It's like, I really got to know Scott well. He would bring this giant bag of like oregano. He's just like, this is weed. And he was a piece of work. But
I still see Don Bailey every once in a while. Some of the noted anti-cannabis foes that have been in Michigan, especially working with Project Sam. Bruce, I know you have to run up against those Project Sam yahoos pretty much everywhere you go, don't you?
Yeah, but you know what's, I was just sitting back for a bit, both admiring Tammy's art behind her, thinking I need to up my game. And the fact that there is some wind or air in the room, some oxygen, to have a discussion about cannabis, even though it's not really happening in the federal context at all, which is extraordinarily disappointing for me, in that I thought there might be a chance to have a rational discussion. But I guess when you have a 74-year-old debating a 78-year-old, that's a hard argument some days. But you guys at least are still carrying it on at different jurisdictional levels. And so I think it may in fact be an upside surprise because it gets lost that that's still occurring, and it might in fact be a better time to win the argument because it's not so polarized at the top. So I think there's good out of something every time.
Just like California, I mean, you can win a statewide election, but you still then have all of the individual municipalities you have to win over. Everyone's given the option to say no to businesses, although personal freedoms they can't say no to. But that, you know, one victory begets a million new battles. It's just the way it is.
Well, and
everywhere you go.
Everybody needs tax money right now. You know, Ethan Nadelman of the Drug Policy Alliance always said that. He said economic downturns are often the best opportunity for a drug policy change. You know, right now we're seeing entities that wouldn't have remotely considered cannabis. Now they're looking at places like Muskegon and Lowell. Meds Cafe was pitching in like tens of thousands of dollars in taxes in this little tiny city, you know. And so other people are like, oh, wait a second, we're facing this massive budget shortage. Maybe we should consider this.
It's a no-brainer, right?
I'm sorry, Bruce. I think that's going to be one of the big drivers of all the other communities getting on board. Is they're going to see all this money being made in taxes, and that's what they need. I mean, and you know, you just can't tax the people more than we already right now.
Yeah. The one thing we can't get stuck in, though, is selling cannabis law reform based just on tax revenue alone. The fact is, when you bring cannabis businesses to town, they bring all of the positivity. They bring the employment. They bring all of the beautification of the community, utilizing dilapidated buildings. I know, Bruce, you were probably going to jump in on that, so let me let you.
That's exactly been my push. So I've been interacting with New York State a lot. And my argument has been exactly like, well, you could actually structure when you go full blast on legalization that you make sure that the production occurs in the geographies where the dilapidated buildings are. Because right beside them are the people who don't have a job. And you know what used to get used in that building that does now? Electricity. Mm-hmm. And so you have tons of line power getting unused. You have a bunch of unemployed or underemployed people. You could actually distribute your production as an excuse and a reason to allow adult access rec to occur sooner, when really what you want is all of the goodies. You want the jobs, you want the utilization so you get tax income off the property, you want the power to be used, and you want, you know, everybody to sort of see an up. But you're bang on. I think it's a very rich stew.
Yeah, I agree completely.
One of the biggest expenses new cannabis industry players have in fitting out their buildings is upgrading electricity, upgrading water, upgrading sewer. And when you have a building that was successfully used for an industrial purpose not that long ago, all of that infrastructure is already in place. Just like Bruce said, you climb on the roof, you take a look and see every angle. What's going on with this building? What are the positives? What are the negatives? And you know what? Cannabis industry, our locations are destination locations. People will drive distance to get to us. So you don't necessarily need to have a place with a high rent that's a walkable location.
Right. Well, and people are going to, if we get everybody to quit, like literally the campaign to spend all your consumable dollars outside the jurisdiction because they won't have cannabis. So when you get, you know, when you go out to get just get everything else. Like I found that to be a super compelling short-term winning argument.
Yeah.
We have a lot of opportunity here in Michigan, and opportunity can be read into as places that haven't adopted pro-business laws yet. But that's just a lot of upside. Bruce, you mentioned earlier how it's important to gauge cannabis, to build out that infrastructure, to have the processing facilities, not only to service your own retail centers, but also to take some business from other places, to make sure that you have production of cannabis that meets the needs. Right now in Michigan, we're experiencing a product shortage, but if you project out 24 months, you're looking at a product overage. Knowing that that's likely to happen because that's a pattern that's happened in other states, you just plan for it.
And you know, it changes over time. The one thing I noticed with Michigan is because of the sophistication and experience of the client, the patient, the customer, they're not like some geographies. Like sometimes on the East Coast, the criteria of cannabis is, oh, good, you have some. They don't ask anything else. Like, it's not like, what is it? No, great, you got weed. That is not going to work for most of the consumers in Michigan. Like now, if you go down the East Coast a little bit, the criteria is that, and for sure, a lot of Canada has gotten like that. Basically, east of the Rockies, British Columbia, there was a medical system, but it was ever more difficult to get reliable weed that wasn't just whatever you got. And so what you're finding in Canada now is they line up in these stores that are kind of out of the regions where there was cannabis. And then you know what, they go in and they say, what is your highest THC? Because that's for sure a proxy for the best. And I'll buy that. And you know, this is a terrific idea for the never smoke cannabis. Now you want to be Snoop Dogg. Excellent. You should jump right in the deep end. There's nothing could go wrong. But I find that in this market, it's already sophisticated on the flower. And I think we're going to probably see that it becomes a generator of sophisticated products because there's going to be an evolution of what people want. And because you're not starting in the basics, you're starting at the top. I could see this becoming a very almost live lab for creating novel outcomes, which I hope will also be inclusive of medical solutions where people really start to co-opt the hospitals and universities as permissible so we can actually get sort of double blind and really move the wellness needle. And I think this could be the state that does it because it's pretty sophisticated compared to a lot of the others and ready to go.
We have a state government interested in investing in infrastructure for research and development too, so that's a positive as well. Mike, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, speaking of that, how is the cookies playing out? Is that's more of a different kind of line, and how's it doing in your stores?
Humongous. So what cookies, just so everybody gets on the same page, cookies is this idea that to be successful as a brand, you need to have something differentiated in quality in the bag, not just a funky looking bag. So they spend a lot of time on, phenotyping. They do work in a number of geographies so that they actually can say that their flower is discreet, special, and pretty powerful stuff. Then they make interesting brands. And, if you go to the store, you'll see them. Then they have a live person whose actual name is Berner, who's a performer, and he crosses all kinds of cultural boundaries, does tons of work, whether it's through commingling with artists from South America across the country, and he's driving this. And what they're doing is they're saying to anybody they license, we'll let you run this, you brand it, you run the store, carry this big blue store, put about half the stuff in there is ours, half can be whatever's yours, be good. But sometime in the future, if we want to buy it back, we can. We can roll it up. So if it became federally legal, you could have this national instant chain of things called cookies with super high quality. And so the reason it's smart is they think long-term, which means they don't try to kill you as a partner every day. And so that's very unique in the cannabis space because most people I find in the cannabis space must like doing something else because they're trying to get rich super quick every day. And so I assume they golf or sail or some goddamn thing. I don't know what they do, but they don't want to work.
Racing towards a buyout. Racing towards a buyout.
I was pretty sad to get fired. I took 13 new jobs the day I got fired, right? Like, what would you do if you don't work, right? It's and so what I like about cookies is they're long-term thinkers. So that means you're willing to invest R&D in breeding and genetics programs. It means you put a business model. It means you spend money in advocacy. So cookies, I would say when you ask how's it working, it's working that way, and that's a smart way to work.
I was a VIP guest at the Cookies grand opening on 8 Mile on that very first day, and I will tell you the number of people with smiles on their faces, I mean, real cannabis connoisseurs. Yeah. I myself, I know the difference between a Gorilla Glue number 4 and Gorilla Glue number none, right? The fact is you can't fool our market. No. There was nobody being fooled. There was all kinds of happy faces there. And I was very pleased with the product that I walked out that door with.
And they come back, and they come back, and they come back. So, thank you. I appreciate it. But, the crew that put the product together, the people who put the store together, like I walk in that store before anybody's there, I'm noticing the paint out detail and how they handled an old infrastructure roof. There wasn't anything to cut a corner. There was not a single wire that was not overpainted so that it actually blended in. And so when you attend to detail, what you end up with is quality and repeatable customers because they get what they want. It's not just a variable, yuck, great. It's always up the middle.
And we're coming towards the end of the show, but I wanted to throw in one question for you, Bruce, because we had the CEO of Skyman on. Was it last week, Rick?
Yes.
And 2 weeks ago.
Was it 2 weeks ago? Okay, yeah. He was predicting that in Michigan we could get up to 500 or 600 provisioning centers, and then there'd be a big shakeout, and it would come back down to around 300-ish. What do you think?
What's the absolute number? I don't know. But what you start having is, regrettably, unless you do a super interesting bespoke sort of thing, you always end up in retail with 3 or 4 major players. And if you don't believe me, drive around past the malls. You see a Starbucks and a few others. Everything goes that way. So I think there will be that. I hope the way people open them is that if there's a shakeout, they haven't mortgaged up everything they have in order to open. But they see this as a responsible business choice because sometimes I'm worried that the folks who get that one license, that it turns out to be a bad thing for them rather than a terrific thing. And so I would hope the regulators sort of help guide that, and that we as people in the industry don't dissuade people from doing it, but make sure that they're not leveraged where the last dollar is in, because sometimes it doesn't go smoothly. But, porridge too hot, porridge too cold, porridge just right. Happens every time. Yeah. Sometimes a chair gets broken along the way. Who knows?
And then one last thing, Rick brought it up, and we were going to try to, we'll do a show about it, is micro business licenses. There's a lot of pushback from some of the bigger players trying to keep the little tiny players out of the market. What do you think of that?
I think there's only going to be big and tiny. If you're in the middle, you're toast. And I think that's the way it should be, right? If you want big and you got volume, they can afford all the labs and the overheads and everything. And if you want to work in the business you create, go nuts. And I think there's a market for people who live, operate, and create. And there's a market for people who scale. But I don't think there's a market for anybody in the middle who says, I'd like to be a little of this, a little of that. It doesn't work. It's specialization or it's expertise.
That sounds like a comment on vertical integration, though, Bruce.
No, vertical integration can make you big. And in fact, sometimes what you'll find is the micro grower says, listen, I'm going to do a great job and I want to put it in your store and I want to make a deal where I take 50% of the gross selling value, which is what I like. Because then the person running the store has an incentive to sell it for the maximum price. They make 50% or more. And the person who grew it makes 50% or more. And I think that model of grow it great and get 50 points of the total selling price can make everybody work. It can be a special corner of the store. In fact, when I was in Jamaica a few times, what I've been pushing is they have 14 parishes there that every parish should have, they have to have 50% of all the product produced and sold by micro growers, and it has to be representation of all 14 parishes. So they actually have a competitive differentiation between the parish products, which might cause the tourists to get off their butt, leave the resort and actually go see what Portland is because they like that strain best. And I think if you did it right in the state, what you do is you don't just say micro grower, you say micro grower from where?
Right.
And people get game on, they start to compete, and you can start to say, well, I grew up there, but I moved here, and you can still buy product that came from that area. And I think it actually makes it a stronger state business because it attaches to the state. And from that, great stories come.
All right. Well, I'm going to have just to honor the time commitment. We do the shameless plug now where everyone gets a chance to talk about their business, their project, whatever's going on. We'll start with Rick. Go ahead, Rick.
Well, of course, I've got a couple of different radio programs. We do Jazz Cabbage Cafe every week from 4 to 6 p.m. I've got 420 Post. As a part of the Michigan Democratic Party's Cannabis Caucus, we oftentimes do broadcasts on 420 on Saturday afternoons. But you can always catch me at my website, which is thesocialrevolution.org, or any of my journalism or photography, or any of the ways around there.
Say your website again. I couldn't even write it down.
Thesocialrevolution.org.
You owe me.
a double plug there. Yes, nice. Very good. Tammy,
good technique.
Ahead. Yes.
Hi. Yeah, just a reminder that the West Michigan Cannabis Guild is alive and well and fighting for better candidates and fighting for better ordinances and better access and expungements and justice for people that have been harmed by marijuana prohibition. So check us out on Facebook or online. And if you're in Grand Rapids and you want to stop by the Pyramid Scheme or the Meanwhile, both these businesses have heavily supported all things marijuana, lots of policy change, countless meetings and gatherings and fundraisers and discussions and strategy sessions. So please throw us some love. It's been a really hard year for hospitality. So we really appreciate any support you can throw at us.
And you mentioned that today your political endorsement list is going to be coming out. So make sure that you send a copy to me. You have my email address, and we'll make sure we publish that tomorrow and in our newsletter. Bruce, go ahead, talk about whatever you want to talk about here. Who do you want to plug or what?
I think the hat says it all, and I've said a lot on top of the hat. So no, I'm here. I'm with Gage. I'm executive chairman. I've been with these guys for more than a year. I've known them for several years. Some of the founders that have involved in how to enter regulated industry in Canada. So I'm pretty familiar with them, proud to be associated with them, and I think they got a good run ahead.
All right, and last but certainly not least, Jamie.
Yeah, so CincyConnects.com is our Cincy Connects website where you can go register for one of our upcoming B2B virtual networking events. And then go check out our magazine, cincymag.com/Michigan. You'll see our latest issue of Cincy Magazine. We talk about how to get a job in the cannabis industry at a time like this, the new challenges and rewards of COVID-19 era catering, and how people are hosting some parties and get-togethers. And does cannabis really make you more creative? I say yes, you know, because I am a consumer myself and a creative. So, but definitely check us out. And we excited that our magazine has been relaunched after, you know, not being published since March due to COVID issues. We revamped our program, and we're taking really strong digital attack, and super excited to continue building building community in the cannabis industry in Michigan and beyond.